We've said it in the past episodes, it can be lonely at the top. As a leader, as an owner, you don't have that inherent peer group necessarily within your own four walls. And people are watching. So whether you lead the department, your mood of the day does trickle down. People notice. Coaching is so important in today's economy. People are being asked to do more with less. AI is automating people out of jobs. So teams are becoming leaner. Profit pressures always are growing. Just because you have a bad day doesn't mean you have to create 10 other bad days around you. But you also need to be able to vent to someone, to be able to relate to someone who has similar challenges. That's the peer group part. But you also have to be able to contain yourself, to be vulnerable, to be able to say, you know what, I don't have all the answers. I need help. This is a big deal, and it opens the door to many other subtopics. We're going to try and cover as many as we can, so stick around. Gentlemen, back in the saddle. All these headlines that we've been seeing have been feeling turbulent. Just, we always think about the macroeconomic effects, but the pressures to do more with less, leaderships are feeling it. The teams below them are feeling it. Always comes back to the people side of things and how we, get everybody in the right headspace. Craig, what are your thoughts there?
Really, I think it's about clarity and focus and helping get your thoughts, your goals out of your head, and having somebody help just clarify them and focus. We all lose focus, and get off the track over, months, years, whatever. But I think a coach really helps you stay on track and just keeps things clear and helps you refocus on what's important while you're doing it, and helps you execute.
Craig, it's interesting you say that, and that all sounds obvious to people. But I think particularly in our privately held customers and what we see from other privately held firms, particularly closely held, not non-PE owned, right? Not kicking the PE folks, but it's different when it's family money, right? And I don't know if you guys ever saw I think it was called U-51. It was a U-boat commander thing, right? But they said the U-boat commander always has to know the answer, right? The commander had said something like he didn't know. And his second in command's like, the U-boat commander always has to know. The business owner, if you are the owner, your team expects you to know. It's only the most vulnerable owners that can really allow themselves, right? Because people come to you since the very beginning, since you were in your garage or your basement or wherever you started, right? And they come to you and they ask. There's a lot of pressure in that. And to have a coach or a peer group or somebody that you can be open with and talk about what you're afraid of, right? Because if you're not afraid, you're not paying attention. If you're not mildly neurotic about the future.
Because there is that needle to thread, right? Not everything that's top of your mind or you're worried about, you can share with your employees. You're going to shutter your doors in 6 weeks if you don't get X. Like, that just causes widespread panic. Back, Craig, so you mentioned peer groups in the past, and it's lonely at the top. This is a great example of this, especially if, what we're talking about here, this all plays, but like, where we started off talking about these layoffs that have been coming with AI and just the rationalization of the workforces. Even Microsoft's laying off, and they're in the IT business. This is what they do, and they're laying off them, employees, because they said AI comes with real benefits. But anyway, the panic that could set in, I wonder if I'm next. This becomes a very front and center topic, and how you handle that. Not only how you handle injecting calm and confidence in your team, and that's a tough challenge in the midst of layoffs, but your own headspace. Because if you're not genuine about it, if you're not feeling it, everybody else is going to catch on to that.
Yeah, the mental health thing, Tony, is really going to be real. I mean, AI aside, but AI, I guess AI not aside, it's going to impact, everybody's thinking now and have that worry. So making sure that your mindset is right, your emotional state is right, and you'll be able to be having the ability to talk with somebody and get that out of your head is the biggest thing. We talk about there's a lot of head trash everybody has. It was once you get it out of your head, it's either great or could be bad. But a coach does wonders just talking out loud with you and not allowing you to get stuff out of your head.
It's good to have accountability too, right? Like you mentioned, get things out of your head. One of my earliest mentors used to say, an idea is in your head and a plan is in right? So review your game plan with your coach, right? Talk about the plays that we're going to run this quarter, and then have that coaching review where we say, how'd the play run? Did it run well? Did it not run well? What do we need to tweak?
Well, it's talking about real stuff, what's biggest on their mind, and and where's your life balance, right? I mean, if you swing too far personal, it's too far professional, you're out of balance and it will impact you, then whatever else is going on in life. Just really the coaches that I've worked with and I've helped people work through issues is really getting those top 3 things that are in their head out, talk about them, and understand they're not this big. Sometimes they're big mountains, and when you talk about them, they're not. But then just making sure you're the accountability and you're executing on the things that are going to give you joy and fulfillment too. We do the working genius, right? What are they climbing a hill that they're not going to be happy climbing when they reach the top? You know what I mean? So that's a big thing that coaches can do.
So is there a baseline to get started with, whether you're an owner, whether you're a VP or just a department leader? Coaching is in play here, but is it just, okay, it's Monday morning, 8 a.m., and now we're going to roll in? Like, what are some of the foundational layers or things to help ensure that you're going to get off on the right foot? You mentioned working genius, which is interesting, right? All about keeping people in their sweet spots. So that feels very important, not just for himself or herself, but the team that they're working with. What are some other key things to help set this engagement up?
I think self-awareness, as much as you can have going into the relationship, the working genius, all these, your love language, those things are real, so from a know yourself and know your strengths and know where you're going to enjoy energy from are really pretty important to get things started, and it moves a little bit quicker and you get more action.
You mentioned self-awareness. Okay, now here's the cynic in me coming out, because I always talk about the owner brain, the CEO brain. Maybe they are self-aware outside of their own business, but feels like they could be stubborn as mules. And I don't want to say there are people that are not candidates. I feel like everybody's a candidate and should embrace coaching and peer groups. But when you come up against the hard heads, what's your approach to that?
Before we only had like Myers-Briggs and DISC, and if owners say, hey, I don't really want to do this assessment, I'm like, why wouldn't you want to know more about yourself, right? I mean, that's the best gift you can give yourself is self-awareness, because then you can start regulating. All 3 of us know what our strengths are, and we have to be cautious and cover our weaknesses and help each other out with our weaknesses, right? So having that conversation about, if you think you know it all, you don't, right? But where are you really having that joy factor? And that's both personal and professional in my mind.
Well, and I know you guys know I'm a big fan of the great game of business, but Jack Stack, calls it out. One of the very first things, right? You gotta wanna, right? You can lead a horse to water, but it takes a lot of effort to drown them, right? They either you're gonna drink or you're not gonna drink. But once you've decided that you're open to that kind of a relationship, Craig, How do people go about finding a coach?
A lot of people already have coaches that you would be, they just don't get asked, do you have a coach, right? So,
or formally tagged as a coach, right? It could just be a trusted confidant.
Right. But asking people that are getting coached is, who they're using. We have coaches in our network, which are really good. But yeah, and then the whole concept of peer group. Most people go to peer groups because they know they need help and they're willing to help, right? And that surrounding yourself around people like that will help your mental shift also if you're having a problem with this, because it is self-awareness, and you need people to cover your blind spots, and success leaves trails. And I bet most of those executives are already being coached by somebody or some friend or something. And doing retrospectives on your life and saying, okay, these are things that didn't go the way I wanted them to go this last week. How do I want to respond the next time I'm in that situation? You actually create new neural pathways in your brain, because you say, if you hit me, I'm going to pause and I'm going to think about it. If I feel you did it, which way, then I'm going to probably you back. But at least I did it. I'm responding versus reacting. And that's that growth mindset. That's the emotional mastery, right? It's kind of like great leaders master their emotions, and that doesn't mask them. They master them, and then you get into the responding the way I want the majority of the time. When I make mistakes, reaction oriented, I do a corrective action and I decide in advance how I'm going to respond the next time. So that's that mindset shift that needs to happen, and coaches really can help you out through that.
I draw a link to exit interviews. Like you say retrospectives, which is for in the moment, but it could be the result of employee exits. But if I am surgical about it, like the exit interview to me is part of this theme. It's like, what can we learn from this? People tend to leave for a reason. It's not always because of the company they're working for. Most of the time, though, right? It could be that it's a pay situation. Now, it could be an outlier that got them to move to another company, but there could be something systemic here. You just pay like shit, and the mass population of data helps tell you that. It could be a leadership challenge, and I've seen a lot of companies just be too dismissive about it. Companies tend to have sacred cows in their organization, and they'll rationalize why this person is here and forever. But systemically, if there's a pattern, I think this is a good data point in a coaching moment, not only for the leaders that may be cited, but from the owner. Do I have the right culture in place here? Do I have some tough decisions to make? I mean, I feel like these are coachable moments too.
Well, and the coaching really is back to the great game, right? And if you look at Springfield Remanufacturing, and I've been in others that run this program, but there is a review every shift. When you hand off from first shift to second shift, we check the score. We know how we're running it. And think about it. It's NFL season, right? Maybe some of our listeners watch. What do the quarterbacks do as soon as they sit down? Somebody hands them a tablet and they're looking. It's the after action review, right? The Blue Angels talk about it. Every time they go up, they come down and they talk about what could they have done better. And so when you get coach, you become a better coach, and it permeates through your organization. And I think that's when, whether you follow Great Game or EOS or any of these other management execution systems, right? You find a framework. The scariest part for me when I was a business owner, I guess we're still owners, but the first time when I was young, it is when they made me write it down. Tom, what are your goals for this year? And then we would sit down every couple weeks, we'd have coffee at McDonald's.
When the leader gets better, what Craig Rochelle says, that when the leader gets better, everybody wins, or everybody gets better. because now you're becoming a better person, a better leader, boss.
So when we got 100 years collective experience here, was there such a people-focused emphasis back then? If not, why? Like, what has brought us to here? The evolution of the working genius, peer groups, are these concepts that have been there since the dawn of time, or has business and culture shifted to a point where it became a, crisis and this was needed and it's helping to save organizations? My father, my grandfather, they had 40-year careers. Same company. It was punched in at 8, you came home at 5. There was never this stress talk about orders are down and what are we going to do? There wasn't this mad rush to always more. And even in my early career, working for a family-owned business, it was the same thing. Shit, in a down year, that's when they dug in and invested big time, so they were all the stronger on the way out. It just doesn't, or on the way up. It just feels different today.
To me, if working genius or whatever you use, it's about applying principles. Who is the Robert? I'm not getting his last name. Everything I really needed to know, I learned at kindergarten. Right? Be nice to people. Get to know them a little bit. Well, how do you get to know them a little bit? Well, in work, in large groups, we got to have an artificial mechanism to help us do that. Personality profiles are one of those mechanisms. It's not disingenuous. It's only disingenuous if you don't believe in the tool. It can be completely genuine if it permeates your organization, and I know how to communicate with somebody more effectively because I've taken the time to have empathy and understand how they operate. Then I would say that as a sophomore in college, Indiana University South Bend, you declare your major. So they hand me 2 slips of paper. One said that your degree of reward will be in direct proportion to your degree of risk. And the second said your ability to work in a team will be a direct reflection of your ability to succeed in business. And so to me, that implied coaching, right? A team without a coach, I don't even understand teams without coaches. Every team that's worth a shit has a coach.
Yeah, Tony, I see where you're coming from on that one. It seems like the older generations, coaching was to fix you. Now it's this, I want to grow mindset. I mean, so I think, if you think back, it's like, oh, I did something wrong. I need a coach to help me fix. And now it's growth. So I think there's something there, but now it's shared and people are openly vulnerable about being coached and sharing it. And I think that a lot of momentum has shifted with those couple of points.
Think about what happens. Craig, I love how you connect the dots on this. Now you go home, you're with your family, and this is still festering in your head. And maybe it turns into a bitch session with the family at the dinner table. Now you got them riled up. It's just a cascading effect. And in today where, households need 2 incomes just to keep the lights on, and the stresses that people are facing these days, economic and personally, this is the last thing that you need to have to bring home, so we want to try and always be in a good headspace if we can.
Yep. Mental health, is super important. We got to stay on top of it now, right? Those little things that are going to fester, you got to drive into. Otherwise, they'll eat you up inside until it blows up anyway. So you might as well drive into that storm as fast as you responsibly can. Sometimes you got to give yourself a 24-hour rule to process, to make sure you address it the right way, and not react. So between that whole react and responding and 24-hour rule, you usually can address things that need to be addressed. As you're just becoming a better person, and respect is a key word. Respecting each other, addressing the issue, not the person. Like Tom, you said, those are all coaches could help you with communication style too, and that, people that grow up in businesses usually haven't been coached on how to communicate, and that's a big deal.
Love the 24-hour rule, response versus react. Everybody can relate in their personal lives, with your significant other, some kind of tension. And left the dishes in the sink, you didn't not mowing the grass, or just pick whatever it is, and there's just this air of tension, and you can avoid it. We've all avoided it at one point in time, and what happens? That tension grows, and then boom, then something happens where everybody explodes or talks it out, and then there's a collective sigh of relief. Everybody feels better. Make up sex, pick your term, right? That comes out of this. But the point is that it's like,
Right.
well, I'm glad we got that off our chest. Well, why the you wait 4 days?
You know why? Because nobody taught us, right? So you shared a little. So I'll just share it, right? I'm in this, and been married a couple of times for those that know, and I'm in a therapy session, and it's I'd really clicked with this person. Well, I tried therapy, wasn't really great. Hey, if you tried coaching and it wasn't great, try another coach. It was a lot like therapy, right? I get this person, fantastic. We're about second or third session, and he looks at me and he says, "Tom, what leads you to believe that you understand how to have a relationship with another human being?" So, like, through the tears, I'm like, "What the hell are you talking about?" He's like, "Who modeled for you?
Help me help you."
Well, okay, if you're a multi-generational business, I was just several $100 million business I'm in recently. I'm chatting with people, family organization, and I said, so, they're big enough. I said, so where are the MBAs around? No MBAs. A lot of liberal arts degrees, actually. Couple business degrees. It's not all about the degree, but who taught you? If you don't understand cost accounting, if you don't understand the difference between managerial, operational accounting, and financial accounting, you don't understand these things. Nobody ever taught you. Well, who should expect you to behave different? So who taught you how to be a good coach?
Yep. And knowing you need help, right? I mean, that's the biggest thing. And then, because we're either growing or dying, right? I mean, so you mind, every company, every leader, very rarely are you going straight. So, and especially the world we're in. So making sure you're on the growing side and you pay it forward with, if you learn something, you coach somebody else, or you help lead them better.
Well, let me ask you this. So, very basic question. Can you help someone who doesn't want to be helped or doesn't think they need help? I think there's a difference between the two.
I mean,
CEO?
Could be CEO, could be a new department leader who's not experienced in said function or all areas of that function. If there's not a sense of self-awareness, is there a fight to be had? I mean that in a good way. Like,
I always, when I'm mentoring and coaching a couple of people I'm doing right now, there's a book called Lead from Behind. I don't know if you guys are leading from behind. And sometimes you just have to influence up if you're one of those people in the organization. And I guess I'm referring to in company resources, Tony. But you normally, until that light comes on for that leader, for that person, which if they see you growing, seeing you do different things, hopefully that gets caught if they're not self-aware from the get-go.
And I think by modeling the better behavior, you do have a chance to influence. Although I think your ability to influence down the organization is easier than influencing up. And not that you can't, as you said, Craig, you can, but it's just a trickier thing depending on how ingrained, the CEO or the business owner is in that.
but I also think it still comes back down to very, very basics, that trusting relationship. Yeah.
Yep.
Having a coach come in out of the blue, I'll say, Craig, no different than when you and I first met, right? I mean, back with the ERP discovery. I'm like, who's this guy? You know, I mean, I knew who you were. Tom recommended you. I mean, it was off to the right start, but I'm like, I know what the I'm doing. You know, that was me in my head, right? And then 5 minutes in, now you're different, right? People, I mean, you just naturally gravitated to, and what was supposed to be a 10-minute conversation ended up being an hour. And I loved it, you know, but usually these trust journeys take time. You know, that's the key. Is it's just very, very basics. You got to have a genuine trusting relationship. We've said this in past episodes. You ask someone about their son who's on the Little League team, how they did. All right. Yeah, appreciate the question, but, you know, I'm pretty sure I could sniff out you're just making small talk and don't give a shit. Or we'll see how the next meeting goes, if it's going to surface again or you're going to keep asking. You know, that's kind of like my litmus test. Are you paying attention? Are you being genuine? And if you are, all right, I like where this is going.
You know, while you're talking, the other thing about coaching, I mean, leadership, growth, communications, but, you know, the flip side of being a great leader through coaching is, I just got it from that book, Let Them Theory, you know, by Mel Robbins. But sometimes you have to let them work through the issue versus jumping in and fix it. So you got to be able to read
that book.
It's a great book.
It's, man, I read it. I'm listening to her podcast now, but it's just like, you know, spouse, whatever. They give you an eyebrow. You're like, should I drive into that or not drive into that? Right. You know, and yeah. There's time too. And there's also time to let them process and then protect your emotional state. You know, that's the whole concept. Sometimes you got to let people be who they are, but you got to you got to protect yourself too. And it's so two flip sides to coach, right? But again, it's emotional mastery, right? You got to be able to know how you're going to respond and how you want to respond.
And that takes experience.
Oh,
right?
Yes.
I mean,
right.
Like that's one thing. I mean, Tony Darden 20 years ago 30 years ago is very different than Tony Darden today. Like the eyebrow you mentioned, oh, it was time to box. You know?
Yeah.
You know, and personally and professionally. And it doesn't go so well, you know? So you need the scars, you need the experience. And I think on the receiving end, like if your coach comes in and he's a recent college graduate, how do you think that's going to go? You know, it's not going to go. In fact, that's an absurd scenario unless, you know, this person's coaching a fifth grader. But, you know, so that experience does matter. I'm not saying that everybody has to be a senior citizen to be a coach, but there is some of that too.
Well, and you do have to be open. It's funny you started to say that. I was probably 37 or 38, and I had a lady with Sage Software. Really, she liked me, and we had I thought, a difficult but challenging conversation. I was enthusiastically representing my position, and about 3 days later, I get this book in the mail, Crucial Conversations. And she writes a real nice note. Tom, you're an up-and-coming leader. I think you have a bright future, but you can do better.
Oh, nice.
Right?
How'd you take that?
I was set back in my chair. I had to call and thank her, right? You got to be vulnerable. You got to recognize when somebody's trying to help you, right?
Well said.
Somebody's trying to help me here. And in honesty, and Craig talked, you know, we've talked about this, the internal stuff. I don't want to spend the energy getting that wound up anymore. I'd much rather have what some people call, they're like, Tom, you're so direct. I'm like, man, I don't want it. I don't want it on my list. Not in my head, not in my heart, nowhere. I want that out. If we got to be uncomfortable for 10 or 15 minutes, let's have at it, because I'm going to feel better.
and just because, well, and because we like to inject AI and everything, I just want to caution our listeners, you know, these therapy sessions and coaching can't be your AI agent, because they're trained and modeled to always give, not challenge, just feed you with positivity, which, can be good. I mean, is good. I'm not going to say can be, is good, but the human will challenge you, have the tough conversations, not always feeding you a bottle, Or am I being unfair, fellas? I don't want to be, I'm not anti-AI here, but I think about my ChatGPT session, great question. You're thinking about it the right way. And it's never like you're wrong and you need to think differently. Don't be an asshole. Like I never hear ChatGPT telling me that.
So I just read an article on that you can't tell it, don't be cheerful to me, question me all the time in the prompt. So it'll come back again. But to your point, you need people interaction. For those that can't afford a coach, could be a little minor step to get some feedback, but still, you need somebody really to interpret you, friend.
That's a good teaching moment. Tell your chatbot agent, quit pampering me.
Yeah. And challenge me like I'm from New Jersey, right?
I love it.
But
I'm sold.
It can't supersede human relationships. I understand the whole conversational thing, and I love playing with these chatbots and building agents. I'm having a ball with it, right? But it is not a substitute for Craig and Tom having a beer.
Oh yeah.
Right? Or Tony and Tom sitting around the pool bullshitting for an hour. Right? Like that's human beings. Maslow, I'm a believer, right? Maslow wasn't right up and down the line, but I think he got the hierarchy of needs figured out pretty clear. And humans need some other human interaction. We are incomplete without it.
Business owners are proud of the money they make, but are they leaving 30% on the table as a result of poor culture and methods within the organization?
We were just talking about that a little bit earlier, but there's a CFO I used to work with. Let's say you're running a $50 million company, right? But it's your company. So what if you could improve 1%, right? And the CFO says to me, hey, if I sell $1, I might make $0.10. Maybe if I'm great, I make $0.25. Because if I save $1, I make $1. So what if we could help you be more efficient? And you could take that 1%, just for those that have to do the math slower, it's $500,000. I feel like I could use an extra $500,000. Mm-hmm. And so, once you're running an enterprise north of about $15 or $20 million, these numbers, you have scale. We start saving you a point here and a point there. That's real money.
Craig, Tom, thanks again for all your advice and comments. I had fun with this conversation. It's an important one, right? Something we can all relate to. Got to be vulnerable. You have to understand that you have blind spots. Coaching does help. The human side of running an organization. I don't care, again, if you have the best product and the best service, and only you offer this to the market. If your employees, if your leaders are not firing on all cylinders, if they're not in a good headspace, you're leaving money on the table. So we got to coach each other, get the best out of everyone, and have an open door. Because we are humans. There are factors that weigh in. Got to help each other.
Take care, everybody. Yeah.
So here we are without Tom. We just hit record, and he's gone.
Already.
All right. Stay tuned. We're going to dive into this, and I don't know.
Stay tuned. We're going to dive into this and see if we can't break our necks in the shallow water.
Break our necks in the what?
In the shallow water.
In the shallow water, yeah. Yeah, there you go. Stay tuned. We're going to dive into this topic. I say that every week.
That's your call.
Yeah.
come up with something clever after dive in. We're going to dive in and
Yeah.
we'll think of a hook for her.
Love the 24-hour rule, response versus react. But I also love the oh, okay, I got it.